Right, gang, we've got some questions. We're going till about 5 to 12 because we've got to create space for Chrissy to talk to us about Pride in Place again. So we'll link back to that conversation. The first question I have in the chat was from Yvonne. I was going to ask Yvonne to come on screen, but she's had to leave. She said in the messages. It's for Wendy, this one. So Wendy, it was about the balance of paid staff and volunteers, really. So in terms of how many staff have you got, and how dependent is what you do on volunteers?
Yeah, so I should have said, so we started with nothing. We've now got a 2.4 million pounds asset base. We've had 2 million pounds in grants, but we've shared about 500,000 with partners. We were able to pay ourselves from day one. We do all of this though, these 5 buildings, and we only have 2.6 full-time equivalent staff members. So our cash flow is always, it's a bit like Wallace and Gromit, that scene, if you remember it, where they're on the train and they're laying the train track in front of them. Bringing back derelict buildings is costly, and revenue grants are really hard to come by. And the social investment market as well, we've just leaned into that lately, and it isn't necessarily, I don't think, fit for purpose in terms of being able to get investments in. We haven't had a grant higher than 485,000. Our counterparts in England are at the 2 million, 4 million, or 8 million bracket. We've just not been able to find ourselves there.
Fab, that's really useful. Just as a supplementary, because obviously this is a problem across the UK, and grant funding is getting ever more hard to find. Is there an aim there that with the property portfolio that you are developing, that you will be able to sustain a core staff from the assets that you get within that
Yeah.
community?
We trade about 165,000 a year at the moment through rental income in our buildings, and we have the potential to grow that by 265,000. But the gap for us is about 960,000 of capital that we need to find. So to be able to turn the tap on onto those, we've got hurdles to jump to be able to put that investment in. But
Yeah,
absolutely.
before the end of the session, I'll put a link into a gallery in Carnarvon as well. So in terms of, there's a really good example that Gwenlli will be totally aware of, but that goes back 40 years in terms of dereliction, and where they are now and what they're doing, and the sustainable nature of Gallery Carnarvon. So I'll put a link in there. Chris, do you want to come in with your question?
Yeah, thank you very much. Three amazing presentations, and this is a question therefore for all three panelists, but it's one where we hope they've been observant about each other. Dewsbury, Ffestiniog, Plymouth. Just wondering, what do you see as interesting observations on each other's, so not your own, on each other's presentations? Is there anything you think, oh, that's something we'd not thought of, or we actually do that? So what are the similarities and what are the differences? Because we could say these are very different places. So over to each of you, probably starting with Chris, I suppose, and then Wendy, and then Gwentley.
Well, I'd just like to say nudges forever be my model and heroes on what we should be doing and how to get there. So I've hopefully learned all along the line forever from them. They're just great. I'm blind now. I was just the scale of it. It's amazing. I saw those staff figures, sort of, tens and hundreds of you. I think it's fantastic you can achieve that scale. And I'd be sort of interested in the backstory.
Should we go
Wendy?
to Wendy next?
So I love it, isn't it? You can see all the same echoes, can't you, for whenever anyone comes on and unpacks their story. I'm loving the if not us, who, and if not now, when. And we absolutely always say that on our risk register. We have the risk of not doing things, and our board has to look at that every sort of 6 months. I love what you're doing as well, Chris, with thinking about it's not just the units, is it? It's about connection, it's about events, it's about that cooperative modeling, about everyone being in it together, and then everyone then coming up with their own suggestions. That is absolutely the ingredient for success, I think.
Brilliant. And Gwenlli?
Uh, I really like that. I think that we all have shared values. It's community benefit. It's that we're people that work and love our communities. I think. I'd say that's that's what you can see in that, and that you definitely need to have that passion for your community to be able to become those catalysts, and being able to just share that space and see the creativity as well in those presentations is amazing.
Yeah, David, I'll come to you next because you've got a question. But what I always think is the love that actually, if we were sat in front of a local authority officer talking about regeneration, is you don't get the love as an emotion in terms of all the work that the community does. So that's just a reflection. David, do you want to come in with your question, which is a good one? You're on. Your mic's off, David.
My question was for Cwmni Bro, but it could apply to the others, and it was around your relationship with your local authority, past, present, and future.
I think yeah, the work with community authority is really important because it's us not thinking that we have all the answers as community enterprises. It's about who's around the table, making sure that everybody that needs to be a part of those conversations are a part of those conversations. So working in partnership and understanding who's best placed and not coming, it's thinking of it as an ecosystem rather than an ecosystem, I think.
I love that. That's brilliant. Ecosystem, not ecosystem. Chris?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? The psychology and organizational setup of local authorities endlessly fascinates me because you'd superficially say we've got a really good relationship, we love each other as people, we're joint bidders to the Heritage Fund and so on. Yet there's this deeply, deeply ingrained, I don't know, what is it? A sort of institutional arrogance, I suppose, that this is what we do. We've always done it. The steamroller comes out. And how do we turn that around? I mean, I'd be interested to be a fly on the wall in Preston and see if it is really very different. I don't know, maybe it is, but there's a definite problem, I think, with local authorities generally. Yeah.
Fab. And Wendy, it'd be interesting because obviously Plymouth traditionally a co-op council, so it'd be interesting on your relationships with the council.
Yeah, I mean, I think at officer level, it's brilliant. There's been some politics that at the political level we've been blocked, I think, over the last 8 years. And there's something about we've done it right, them. But I think things now are starting to get easier, which is great. Brilliant MP support and great at officer level, but there's something in between that's got in the way. And I think austerity got in the way as well, because then they had to compete with us for very big funds to be able to come into Plymouth. So they knocked us out of being able to probably get about £7 million worth of funding because they were our direct competitor. And they have resources that are massive. We have a tiny team to write the same bid for the same money, and they have, they can rely on so many staff. So it is incredibly frustrating and heart-wrenching sometimes, but I think that is on the change. So that's
Yeah.
good.
And if you think of the wasted time of competitive bidding in terms of community against community, local authority against local authority, and everybody's just trying to do the same thing, aren't they? So yeah, hopefully that will change. Does anybody else want to put their hand up and come on screen and ask a question? We've potentially got 5 minutes before we need to move on. Chris?
Yeah. Just final sort of question then, really, what was the biggest challenge? Because it's always about trying to understand how do they sort of, we could say get started, but I don't want to give you the answer as getting started. So I don't know if it's getting started or realizing something along the way. My gosh, this isn't going to plan. So I don't know if it's a getting going or a sustaining is the biggest challenge, because it's one thing to set something up and all be excited at the start, and it's then another thing to actually hold it, handle it, manage it, govern it. And it's so interesting the way you talk about governance, and love and passion. So I'll move out and just ask your reaction to that each. Thank you.
There we are. Should we go to Chris first?
Well, hats off to the council. I mean, they adopted this fairly big idea to create the first community-run shopping centre in the UK, and giving in this 10-year lease, which will probably be extended if we don't mess it up. And that does give you the capacity. You know, we should have a 40,000 surplus, give or take, which will allow us to expand from our 1.5 members staff to actually do the sort of community development we want. So that was a challenge which we won, and we're really happy about that.
Brilliant. Gwenlli?
Yeah, in terms of Cwmni Bro, well, what we do have is we have over 70 board members in the community with all the different social enterprises. They're all on a volunteer basis, but they're also a lot of skills, lots of talents, and that now that we're forming this idea of how do we create a network, we've got a network for the social enterprises. Well, how do we create a network for the board members that they have peer-to-peer support as well? So possibly it's really challenging, but we're not seeing a lot of people dropping out of boards. They love what they do, and they have that real belief that they're doing it for a better Bro Ffestiniog. And you were seeing a lot. Some of them are going from one social enterprise to another, and they cross-pollinate within those social enterprises, which is a fantastic place to be. But yeah, in getting going, I think we had communities first here for a while. That started off a little bit of a revolution in terms of the social enterprises. You had some here already, but looking at what the potential was for making sure that working together and breaking down that competition was a huge part of that. So I think, touch wood, it's going from strength to strength, and I think that we have Plaid in now, which is looking at community work and enterprise work, and seeing what happens out of that is going to be an interesting period of time now.
Diolch, Gwenlli, and last word to Wendy.
So I think ours is, well, I've written down quite a few actually, but cash flow would be our biggest challenge, I think, because we set ourselves up, we followed the energy, we got the mandate and the permission from our community because people wanted to see something different. It's market failure on Union Street. There's nothing that's local authority owned, so we have to then deal with dodgy landowners and who want a lot of money for their very rundown and derelict properties. And we can only buy the properties when they come to market. So we made decisions on those big buildings, and of course they'll make huge impact, but they're the trickiest to bring back into use. And so we probably need next time to get something we can flip quite quickly and that gives us an income. I think there's also something about access to finance, that we're at the point where we need to refinance some of those loans. And like I said earlier, the social investment marketplace, I don't think is set up for that refinancing. I think that's really bad that it isn't set up for that. They're there for the first starters. They're not for the long journey. So access to money would be our biggest challenge. And then obviously we want to be able to create a cash flow because our assets are locked. We want to demonstrate that this is sustainable. Nudge, we've never thought that we'll be here for years and years and years. We'd want to iterate it to the next generation, to the next iteration. It's not like we want to feed ourselves and continue to feed ourselves, but the amount that we're trying to change, because it's derelict buildings, bringing them to be sustainable, it's a huge challenge and a huge ask. And then when we see big local authority projects that have £42 million budgets, we just sit there very green. But anyway, I'll stop talking so we can go on to the next.
Diolch yn fawr. I wanted to move us on to Chrissy, but Simon, you've got your hand up, so hopefully there's just a brief comment or a quick, succinct question before we move on.
Yeah, very great. I mean, just really wanted to jump in on what you were describing there, Wendy. And I'm curious, is there any scope to use compulsory purchase powers? I know that some of those have been expanded within the new sort of Devolution Act. So has that ever been discussed with the local authority? Might they more aggressively sort of get behind this using some of those processes? But yeah, perhaps there's not time to go into that, but I'd love to know more at some point.
Fab. Maybe you guys can link up and pick that up offline, which is brilliant.